My name is Father Michelangelo Romero. I'm 34 years old, and 7 years ago I took my vows at a small parish on the outskirts of San Antonio, Texas. St. Teresa's Church isn't large or imposing, but it's mine. Well, God's technically. But after so many years, every pew, every stained glass window, every corner of this old building feels like part of my soul. I didn't always want to be a priest. In fact, until I was 25, I led a fairly ordinary life. I studied architecture, had a few relationships, went out on weekends with friends, but there was an emptiness that nothing seemed to fill. After my younger brother's death in a car accident, I found myself searching for answers in places I'd never explored before. Faith found me in my darkest moment, or perhaps I found it. Either way, 2 years later I was in seminary, and 3 years after that I was holding my first Mass. Celibacy never seemed like an impossible sacrifice. Sure, there were moments of loneliness, nights when the silence of the rectory felt too heavy, but my calling was strong. I had purpose, community, a connection to something greater than myself. Or at least that's what I believed, until that July afternoon, when she walked through the doors of my church. It was a Wednesday, around 3 in the afternoon. I was at the altar, arranging flowers for Sunday's Mass, when I heard the main door open. The sound of heels against the stone floor echoed through the empty space. I turned around and saw her. She was probably in her early 40s, maybe 42, chestnut hair with copper highlights that fell in soft waves to her shoulders. She wore a fitted white nurse's uniform that accentuated a figure that, even beneath my cassock, I couldn't help but notice. But it was her face that truly stopped me. Delicate features, lightly tanned skin, and dark green eyes that seemed weighted with 1,000 untold stories. She held something in her hands. A small religious image. "Excuse me, Father," she said in a soft but firm voice. "Do you have a moment?" "Of course," I replied, stepping down from the altar. "How can I help you?" She approached slowly, her eyes scanning the church's interior, as if searching for something more than just to speak with me. "My name is Valentina Morales. I'm a nurse at St. Mary's Hospital, a few blocks from here." She extended her hand. When I took it to greet her, I felt an electric current run up my arm. Her skin was warm, soft. I held her hand perhaps a second longer than appropriate. "Father Michael," I said, releasing it quickly. "Welcome to St. Teresa's." She smiled, but there was sadness in that smile. "I work in the palliative care unit," she continued. "I spend a lot of time with patients who are in their final days. One of my patients, Mr. Eduardo Vargas, asked me to bring this here." She showed me the image she was carrying. It was a small statue of the Virgin Mary, ancient and worn by time. He says it belonged to his grandmother, and that when he was a boy he came to this church every Sunday. He wants it to stay here, says it's where it belongs. I took the statue carefully. It was beautiful, full of history. "Of course, I'll place it in a place of honor. Is Mr. Vargas very ill?" Valentina nodded, her eyes glistening with held-back tears. "He doesn't have much time left. Days, maybe a week if he's lucky. It's difficult. I never get used to saying goodbye to my patients." There was something in the way she said it, a vulnerability so raw that I felt an immediate impulse to comfort her. Without thinking, I placed my hand on her shoulder. "You're doing God's work, Valentina. Accompanying people in their final moments is one of the most sacred acts that exists." She looked up at me, and our eyes met. For a moment, the world stopped. I could see every shade of green in her eyes, the slight trembling of her lips, the way her breathing had become a little faster. "Thank you, Father," she whispered. I needed to hear that. I don't know how long we stayed like that, simply looking at each other. It was probably only seconds, but it felt like an eternity. There was something between us, something that shouldn't be there, something dangerous and tempting. Finally she broke eye contact, and took a step back. "I should go. I have a shift in an hour." "Of course. And Valentina, if you ever need to talk, or just a quiet place to reflect, the doors of this church are always open." She gave me another one of those sad smiles. "I'll keep that in mind, Father Michael." I watched her walk away, her heels echoing again in the church's silence. Just before reaching the door, she stopped and turned. "Father?" "Yes?" "Do you believe God tests us? That He places us in situations where we must choose between what we want and what is right?" The question caught me by surprise. There was something more in her words, a hidden meaning I couldn't fully decipher. "I believe God gives us free will," I responded carefully, "and with it, the responsibility to make decisions that honor both our hearts and our principles." She nodded slowly, as if processing something deep. "Thank you, Father. We'll see each other soon." And then she left, leaving me alone in the church with an ancient statue in my hands and a feeling in my chest that I hadn't experienced in years. Valentina returned 2 days later. It was Friday afternoon, and I was in the rectory reviewing Sunday's sermon when I heard the doorbell. Opening the door, there she was, this time dressed in fitted jeans and a white blouse that revealed the delicate line of her collarbone. "Valentina," I said, surprised. "I didn't expect to see you so soon." "I hope I'm not interrupting, Father." "Mr. Vargas asked about the statue. He wanted to know if you'd found a good place for it." "Of course. Come in, I'll show you." I led her toward the church. I had placed the Virgin's statue on a small side altar, surrounded by candles and fresh flowers. The afternoon light streamed through the stained glass windows, bathing the space in golden and blue tones. "It's perfect," Valentina whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "He'll be so happy." She stood there, hands clasped in front of her, and I watched her in silence. The way the light played with her hair, the delicate profile of her face, the soft curve of her neck. I felt a pang of guilt for noticing, but I couldn't help it. "Would you like to light a candle for him?" I offered. She nodded. She took one of the tall candles, lit it with slightly trembling hands, and placed it next to the others. Then she closed her eyes and her lips moved in silent prayer. I also closed my eyes and prayed. I prayed for Mr. Vargas, for Valentina, for the strength to resist whatever was growing inside me. When I opened my eyes, she was looking at me. "Father Michael?" "Yes." "Do you ever feel lonely?" The question hit me like a punch to the stomach. "We all feel lonely sometimes," I responded cautiously. "That's not what I mean. I mean, you chose a life of solitude. Do you ever regret it?" I should have given her a pastoral answer, something about sacrifice and devotion, but instead I was honest. Sometimes, on silent nights, when the rectory is too empty, when I see couples in church holding hands, or complete families. Yes, sometimes I wonder what it would be like to have someone. And what do you do when you feel that way? I pray. I remind God why I chose this path, and usually the feeling passes, and if it doesn't pass, our eyes met again, and this time I saw something in hers that made me hold my breath. Desire, longing, the same thing I was feeling. "Valentina, I'm sorry," she said quickly, breaking eye contact. "I shouldn't ask such personal questions. It's just that I also feel lonely, very much so." "Are you married?" I asked, though I saw no ring on her finger. "Divorced. 5 years ago. My ex-husband couldn't deal with my work, with the long hours, with coming home emotionally drained after losing a patient. He said I was married to my career, not to him." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. He was right. I loved my work more than him. But now I'm 42, living alone, and sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice." She took a step closer to me. I could smell her perfume, something soft and floral, that made me want to close my eyes and inhale deeply. "Father Michael?" "Yes?" My voice came out huskier than I intended. "Do you believe in instant connections? That two people can meet and just know there's something there?" My heart was beating so hard I was sure she could hear it. "Believe God puts people in our path for reasons we don't always immediately understand, and if the reason is a test, a temptation." She took another step. Now she was so close I could see the tiny golden flecks in her green eyes, the slight blush on her cheeks. "Valentina, tell me you don't feel it too," she whispered. "Tell me I'm the only one, and I'll leave right now, and never bother you again." I should have told her that, should have stepped back, remembered my vows, my commitment to God and the church, but I couldn't. "I can't tell you that," I admitted, my voice barely audible, "because I'd be lying." Her eyes widened with surprise, then filled with something I can only describe as relief mixed with pain. "So what do we do?" she asked. "I don't know." We stood there, separated by barely inches, the air between us charged with electricity and contained desire. I could feel the heat of her body, see the movement of her chest as she breathed. Slowly, as if in a dream, she raised her hand and placed it on my cheek. Her touch was soft, tentative, but it burned like fire. "Michael," she whispered, using my name without the title for the first time. And in that moment I almost did it, almost closed the distance between us, almost kissed her the way every fiber of my being was screaming at me to do. But then, the church bells rang, marking 6 in the evening. The sound pulled us from the trance. Valentina withdrew her hand and took a step back, her eyes shining with tears. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. This was wrong." "No," I said quickly. "It wasn't wrong to feel what we feel, but acting on it would destroy everything you've built," she finished. "I know, and I would never ask that of you." She turned to leave, but I stopped her. "Valentina, wait." She stopped, but didn't turn around. "You can come here whenever you want. We can talk, as friends. Just, I need you to understand that I can't give more than that." "I understand, Father Michael," she said, her voice trembling. "But I don't know if I can settle for just friendship when my heart wants so much more." And with that, she left, leaving me alone in the church with the echo of the bells and the weight of a desire I knew I couldn't satisfy. The following weeks were a delicious torture. Valentina came to the church almost every day. Sometimes she brought news of Mr. Vargas. Other times she simply said she needed a quiet place to think. We sat on the pews and talked for hours about everything and nothing. Her childhood in Mexico, my time in seminary, our fears, our dreams. Each conversation brought us closer. I learned that she loved strong coffee and sunrises, that she had lost her mother to cancer when she was 16, and that was the reason she had become a nurse, that she had a contagious laugh she rarely let out, but when she did, it lit up the entire room. She learned about my brother, about how his death had led me to faith, about my doubts, my struggles, the moments when I questioned my vocation. She listened without judging, with those green eyes that seemed to see directly into my soul. And with each passing day, the desire grew. It was in the small moments, when our hands accidentally brushed while passing a prayer book, when she leaned close to me to see something, and her hair grazed my cheek, when our gazes met across the empty church and everything else disappeared. I began to wait for her, to anxiously watch the clock around 3, when she normally finished her shift. My heart would leap when I heard the door open. I found myself thinking about her during masses, searching for her among the congregation on Sundays. One particularly hot August afternoon, I was in the sacristy changing after Mass, when I heard her voice. "Father Michael? I'm here, Valentina. Give me a second." I came out, still adjusting my collar. She was standing by the altar, and there was something different about her. Her eyes were red, as if she'd been crying. "What happened?" I asked immediately, approaching. "Mr. Vargas. He passed away this morning." "Oh, Valentina, I'm so sorry." Without thinking, I embraced her. It was the first time I held her like that completely, without reservations. She clung to me, her body trembling with silent sobs, her face pressed against my chest. I could feel every curve of her body against mine, the warmth of her skin through the thin fabric of her blouse, the scent of her hair, almonds and vanilla. It was too much, and it wasn't enough. "He was alone at the end," she murmured against my chest. "He had no family, just me, and he asked me to thank you for taking care of his grandmother's statue. You gave him peace in his final days. That's a gift." She lifted her face to look at me, still in my arms. Her eyes were moist, her lips slightly parted. We were so close I could feel her breath on my skin. "Michael," she whispered, "I don't know how much longer I can do this." "Do what?" "Pretend we're just friends. Pretend I don't think about you every minute of every day. Pretend I don't want to." She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. I knew exactly what she wanted to say, because I felt the same. "Valentina, kiss me," she said suddenly. "Just once. Give me that. And then I'll leave. I'll never come back. But I need to know what it feels like, even if just for a second." My mind screamed, no, that this would cross a line I couldn't uncross. But my body had other ideas. My hands moved to her waist, drawing her closer. She gasped softly, her hands rising to my chest. "I can't," I whispered. "Though every part of me wanted to. If I kiss you, I won't be able to stop there." and that would destroy us both. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Then what do you suggest? That we just ignore this. I suggest we be honest about what this is, and that we find a way to handle it without breaking everything we've built. And how do we do that? I don't know. But I'm not ready to lose you from my life, even if I can't have you the way I want. She closed her eyes, breathing deeply. Okay, we'll be friends. Nothing more. Nothing more, I repeated, though we both knew it was a lie. The following months were a delicate dance between the permitted and the forbidden. Valentina and I established boundaries. No touching more than necessary. No meetings alone in private places. Only conversations in the church, in public spaces, where temptation would be easier to resist. But boundaries are hard to maintain when every cell in your body screams to break them. One September night, there was a terrible storm. I was in the rectory reading when I heard frantic knocking at the door. Opening it, there was Valentina, drenched by the rain, shivering. My car broke down 2 blocks from here, she said through chattering teeth. Can I use your phone to call a tow truck? Of course, come in. She entered, leaving a trail of water on the floor. Her clothes were completely stuck to her body, and I had to make a conscious effort not to look. Let me get you a towel and some dry clothes. I went to my room and returned with one of my shirts and a towel. I pointed to the bathroom. Change in there. I'll make you something hot to drink. When she came out a few minutes later, wearing my oversized shirt with her wet hair falling in waves over her shoulders, she looked more beautiful than ever, and more dangerous. The tow truck will take at least an hour because of the storm, she said, approaching where I was making tea in the small kitchen. No problem. You can wait here. We sat on the small living room sofa, maintaining a respectable distance between us. Outside, the storm raged, thunder shaking the windows. It reminds me of storms in my hometown, Valentina said, looking out the window. When I was a girl, I was so scared of them I'd get into my mom's bed. And now I love them. There's something beautiful in chaos, don't you think? In the way nature just lets loose. She looked at me, and there was a hidden meaning in her words that we both understood. Sometimes chaos is necessary, I said carefully, but other times it only causes destruction. And how do you know the difference? You don't always know. Sometimes you just have to trust you're making the right choice. She moved a little closer, her knee now brushing mine. Michael, have you ever thought about leaving the priesthood? The question caught me off guard. Why do you ask that? Because I see how you look at me. I feel the tension between us, and I wonder if I weren't here, if you'd be happier. You're not what makes me unhappy, Valentina. You're what reminds me I'm human, and is that a bad thing? It can be when I forget my purpose. She was quiet for a moment, then spoke again, her voice barely a whisper. Can I confess something to you? Always. Sometimes at night I imagine what it would be like if things were different. If we had met under other circumstances. If you weren't a priest and I didn't carry so much emotional baggage. Valentina, I imagine candlelit dinners, walks in the park holding hands, waking up next to you and not having to feel guilty for wanting it. Her hand found mine on the sofa, her fingers intertwined with mine, and I didn't stop her. I think about it too, I admitted, more than I should. Then why don't we? Because my vows mean something. Because I made a promise to God that I can't break just because my heart wants something else. What if God put us in each other's path for a reason? What if this is the test, choosing love over duty? Or maybe the test is choosing duty over love. Tears ran down her cheeks. I hate that you're right. I lifted our intertwined hand and gently kissed her knuckles. It was the only kiss I allowed myself to give her, and even so, it felt like crossing an invisible line. Me too, I whispered. The tow truck arrived 20 minutes later. When Valentina left, taking my shirt and promising to return it, I stood at the door watching the taillights of her car disappear into the rain. That night, I prayed like never before. I prayed for strength, for clarity, for release from this desire consuming me. But for the first time in my life as a priest, my prayers felt empty. The breaking point came in October, during the feast of St. Francis of Assisi. The parish organized a large celebration every year with food, music, and a special mass. Valentina had offered to help with preparations, and we spent the whole day working side by side, setting up tables, hanging decorations, preparing everything. It was torture and joy at the same time. Every accidental brush of our hands, every shared smile, every moment where our eyes met across the crowd. In the evening, during Mass, I saw her sitting in the third row. She wore a dark blue dress that made her eyes shine like emeralds. She distracted me so much, I almost forgot the words of the homily. After Mass, during the celebration, I approached her. "Are you enjoying yourself?" "It's beautiful," she said, looking around. "You've built something special here, Michael, a real community. I couldn't do it alone, but you do it alone, don't you? At the end of the day, you return to an empty house, with no one to embrace you, to tell you that you did a good job. I have God, and is that enough?" Before I could respond, Father Thomas, an older priest from a neighboring parish who had come for the celebration, approached. "Michael, introduce me to your friend? Father Thomas, this is Valentina Morales. She's a nurse at St. Mary's Defied," he said, shaking her hand. Then he looked at me with a knowing smile. "It's rare to see you talking so animatedly with someone, Michael. You're usually more reserved." I felt heat rising up my neck. "Valentina has been a great help to the parish. Glad to hear it. Well, I'll leave you too. Michael, can we talk tomorrow? There's something I'd like to discuss with you." When he left, Valentina looked at me with curious eyes. Did he notice? I don't know. Maybe, and if he did, what would happen? Nothing good for either of us. She took my hand, a bold gesture with so many people around. "Michael, I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen without interrupting." I nodded, my heart racing. I was offered a job in Houston. It's a better position, better pay, and most importantly, it's far from here. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. When they offered it to me 2 weeks ago. I've been postponing the decision because I don't want to leave you. But I think I have to. Why? Because every day I spend here, I fall more in love with you. And every day it gets harder to accept that we can never be together. This is destroying me, Michael. And I think it's destroying you too. She was right, absolutely right. When do you have to decide? End of the month. That gave us 2 weeks. Valentina, don't ask me to stay, she said, her eyes filling with tears. Because if you do, I will, and that will mean continuing to live in this limbo, wanting you but not being able to have you. I can't live like that. What if I leave the priesthood? The words left my mouth before I could stop them. We both froze, the weight of what I had just said, hanging in the air between us. "No," she finally said. "I can't let you do that for me. What if it's not just for you? What if I've been questioning my vocation since I met you? What if you just showed me something that was already there? Michael, you're a good priest. This community needs you. But I need you."
Yeah.
There it was. The raw, naked truth. I could no longer hide it, could no longer pretend my duty was stronger than my desire. Valentina sobbed, covering her mouth with one hand. "Don't make this harder." "You're right," I said, forcing myself to step back. "You're right. You should take the job. You should leave. It's best for both of us." "Then why does it feel so horrible?" "Because loving someone you can't have always hurts." We stood there, surrounded by music and laughter, completely alone in our misery. 2 weeks, she whispered. "Give me 2 more weeks with you. Then I'll go, and you can go back to being the priest this parish needs." And what about what I need? Sometimes what we need, and what's right, aren't the same thing. She was right. She was always right. 2 weeks, I agreed. And so began the most beautiful and painful 14 days of my life.